Miss, do you have insurance? Nadine Carter blinked up from the wet street, rainwater running into her eyes as red lights flashed across the pavement. My wallet, she gasped. It was stolen at work, please, I can't. The EMT looked at her torn pants, then at the blood spreading beneath her leg. For 1 second, Nadine thought he was reaching for a stretcher. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for updates. Instead, he turned to the driver. The driver leaned out, checked a tablet and muttered, "No payment authorization." A woman on the sidewalk shouted, "She's bleeding, take her." But the EMT only stepped back. Nadine's fingers scraped against the asphalt as she tried to lift herself. "Please, I feel dizzy, I can't breathe right." The ambulance doors slammed. Then the vehicle pulled away. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then someone whispered, "Did they just leave her?" Nadine's face was pale, her night shift uniform soaked from the rain and the street. Just 15 minutes earlier, she had been locking up the convenience store, trying to finish one more shift before morning classes. Then the SUV came around the corner too fast, clipped her, and kept going like she was nothing. Now the ambulance had done the same. A man in a grey hoodie dropped beside her and pressed his jacket near her injury. "Stay with me, I'm calling another one." Nadine's eyes followed the ambulance as it slowed at the end of the block. On its side, through the rain, she saw the logo. Hail Emergency Response. Her breath caught. "No," she whispered. The man beside her frowned. "You know them." Nadine didn't answer. Her mother's voice flashed in her memory, sharp and terrified from years ago. "Never trust private emergency contracts, especially not Hail." Then down the street, the ambulance brake lights flared. It reversed. Fast. The same ambulance came back, tires hissing over the wet road. This time a man in a dark coat stepped out before it fully stopped. Victor Hale. Everyone turned toward him, like he was there to fix what his crew had done. But Nadine stared straight at him and said, "I know exactly who you are, Victor." Victor froze. "Get her into the ambulance, now." Victor Hale's voice cut through the rain so sharply that both EMTs moved instantly. The same men who had abandoned Nadine seconds earlier suddenly rushed forward with a stretcher. "Easy," one of them said softly. "Watch her leg." Nadine recalled the moment their hands touched her shoulders. "Don't touch me." The EMT hesitated. "I said don't touch me until the police get here." Victor forced a calm smile. "Miss Carter, you need treatment." "You already decided I didn't." The bystander in the grey hoodie lifted his phone higher, still recording. Victor noticed immediately. His jaw tightened. Within minutes, police arrived, statements were taken, and Nadine was finally loaded into the ambulance. Rain hammered the roof during the drive to St. Gabriel Medical Center. Victor sat across from her the entire time. "How do you know my name?" he asked quietly. Nadine winced as the ambulance hit a pothole. "My mother worked for St. Gabriel." Victor's expression barely shifted. "She used to keep files about you hidden in our apartment," Nadine continued. "Every time your company was mentioned, she'd panic." Victor folded his hands together. "Your mother misunderstood a lot of things." But Nadine remembered too much. Late-night arguments through thin apartment walls, her mother warning her never to trust certain ambulance companies, boxes filled with papers labeled Hail Response contracts. The memory made her stomach tighten harder than the pain in her leg. When they arrived at the hospital, everything changed again. Doctors rushed to her room immediately. Nurses spoke in hushed voices. One receptionist looked at Nadine's chart, then quickly picked up a phone. "You didn't tell me her daughter was involved," she whispered. Nadine's pulse quickened. Victor stepped closer to her bed while staff moved around them. "Tonight became chaotic," he said carefully. "Don't misunderstand what happened out there." Before Nadine could answer, the hospital room door burst open. Her mother rushed inside, breathless and terrified. Then she saw Victor standing beside the bed. Her face hardened instantly. "You left her there too." Victor's face lost all color. By morning, the video was everywhere. Every news station in the city replayed the same footage. Nadine bleeding in the street while an ambulance shut its doors and drove away. Did a private emergency crew refuse treatment over payment? One anchor asked. Outside St. Gabriel Medical Center, protesters packed the sidewalk holding signs that read "People before profits" and "AMBULANCES aren't, UBERS." From her hospital bed, Nadine watched Victor Hale stand behind a podium surrounded by cameras. "Our team followed standard stabilization procedures," he said smoothly. "Claims being made online are incomplete and emotionally charged." Nadine stared at the screen. "He's lying," she muttered. Her mother stood near the window, arms folded tightly. For a long moment she stayed silent. Then she finally said, "I tried to stop him years ago." Nadine looked up. "I oversaw ethics compliance for the hospital network," her mother admitted. "Victor's ambulances were quietly rerouting away from low-income neighborhoods, delayed pickups, denied transports, cases marked as non-recoverable financially." "You knew this was happening." "I reported it," her mother's voice hardened. "The board buried it." Nadine suddenly remembered the folders hidden in their apartment. The highlighted districts. Her district. Outside, chants from protesters echoed through the hospital windows. Then things got worse. The bystander from the street uploaded the full video. Not just the ambulance leaving, but Nadine begging for help, while the EMT stood there doing nothing. Public outrage exploded. By afternoon, reporters crowded every hospital entrance. Some board members stopped publicly defending Victor altogether. Victor responded immediately. He released a statement, suggesting Nadine's family had personal motives tied to past employment disputes. The media turned on her fast. While nurses wheeled Nadine toward imaging scans, reporters surrounded her stretcher. Did your mother fabricate accusations after losing her job? Was this staged to target Hale emergency response? Nadine froze under the flashing cameras. Then a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "A move." The man in the grey hoodie stepped forward holding his phone. "I gave the police another recording." Detectives nearby took the device. One officer replayed the audio. Victor's voice came through clearly. "Do you realize whose daughter that is?" The hallway went completely silent. At 6 the next morning, investigators raided Hale Emergency Response Headquarters. News helicopters circled overhead, while officers carried boxes of files out of the building. EMT crews were pulled off active shifts and separated for questioning. Inside her hospital room, Nadine watched the live coverage in stunned silence. "This got bigger fast," the nurse beside her whispered. It kept getting bigger. Former employees started contacting reporters anonymously. One claimed ambulances were routinely redirected away from neighborhoods marked as low recovery zones. Another described crews being pressured to ask about insurance before transport whenever possible. By evening, state investigators announced they were reviewing multiple delayed response deaths connected to Victor's company. Nadine looked toward her mother. "How long has this been happening?" Her mother opened an old messenger bag she'd carried for years. Longer than anyone wanted to admit. She pulled out stacks of copied dispatch logs. "I never stopped investigating after they forced me out." Nadine flipped through the pages slowly. Entire neighborhoods had been color-coded. Green for profitable. Yellow for uncertain. Red for financial risk. Her chest tightened when she saw her own apartment district highlighted repeatedly in red ink. One EMT finally agreed to cooperate with detectives. On television, reporters revealed part of his statement. Victor instructed crews to avoid what he called charity transports. Another detail followed moments later. Victor had recognized Nadine's surname immediately that night. He knew exactly who her mother was. He feared the Carter family still had evidence. Victor tried one final defense during an emergency press briefing. The crew temporarily withdrew because the accident scene was unsafe. But investigators compared GPS records with dispatch timestamps. The ambulance had remained parked nearby for several minutes waiting for Victor's instructions. The lie collapsed instantly. 2 days later, Nadine was asked to testify before the hospital board. As she approached the hearing room on crutches, cameras flashed non-stop down the hallway. Victor stood outside the doors waiting. His voice dropped low enough that only she could hear. "You should have stayed unconscious." Nadine stopped. Then she slowly pulled a flash drive from her jacket pocket. Her mother's hidden files. She looked directly at him. "Then let's play everything." And she pushed open the hearing room doors. The hearing room was already packed when Nadine entered. Board members filled the long front table. Reporters lined the walls shoulder to shoulder. Thousands more watched the livestream online as cameras pointed toward the center of the room. Victor Hale sat rigidly beside his attorneys, trying to maintain the same controlled expression he'd worn for days. Nadine's mother placed several thick folders onto the evidence table. "These are internal reports submitted over 7 years," she said. "Every complaint tied to denied or delayed emergency response under Hale emergency response contracts." The room grew quieter with every page projected onto the screen. Dates, dispatch records, neighborhood maps, unanswered complaints. Then Nadine plugged the flash drive into the hearing system. Audio crackled through the speakers. Victor's voice filled the room. "Prioritize insured transports first." Another recording followed. "Do not waste advanced units on non-recoverable accounts." Murmurs spread across the audience. Then the final recording played. "Cold, direct, unmistakable. Dead debt costs less than unpaid treatment." The room erupted instantly. One board member slammed his hand against the table. Reporters shouted questions over each other. Even several EMTs seated near the back looked horrified hearing the recordings publicly. Under pressure, 2 crew members finally stood and admitted the truth. "We were told refusing transports protected the company," one said shakily. "People who questioned it got suspended." Everything unraveled after that. Victor had built a bonus system rewarding reduced uninsured transports. Complaints disappeared through hospital connections. Entire districts had been flagged as financial losses. And on the night Nadine was hit, Victor recognized her last name immediately. He knew exactly whose daughter she was. Years earlier, Nadine's mother had threatened to expose his operation. Victor believed the family still possessed evidence that could destroy him. So when the ambulance crew reached Nadine and realized who she was, he ordered them to leave the scene. Only when witnesses started recording did he rush back to control the damage. Nadine sat silently through most of the hearing. But then prosecutors replayed the original street footage. Rain pouring down. Her voice weak and panicked. "Please don't leave me." The ambulance doors shutting. The vehicle driving away. For the first time since the accident, Nadine broke down crying. Her mother reached over immediately and held her hand while the entire room watched in silence. Several hospital board members finally admitted they ignored earlier warnings because Victor's contracts had saved the network millions every year. Before the hearing could even conclude, uniformed officers entered through the side doors. Victor stood abruptly. "This is unnecessary." One detective answered calmly, "Victor Hale, you are under arrest pending charges related to medical negligence, fraud, obstruction, and reckless endangerment." Cameras exploded with flashes as officers stopped him near the exit. Outside the hospital, protesters cheered when Victor was escorted into a police vehicle in handcuffs. Over the next few weeks, everything collapsed around him. Hale Emergency Response lost every city contract. Families filed lawsuits connected to delayed emergency care. State investigators reopened suspicious death cases. Several hospital executives resigned under public pressure. The EMT crew involved in abandoning Nadine had their licenses suspended during the investigation. Weeks later, Nadine returned to community college walking carefully with a cane. Life still felt different now, slower, heavier. But no longer powerless. She and her mother started rebuilding the relationship fear and secrecy had damaged for years. They talked openly for the first time since Nadine was a child. Soon afterward, St. Gabriel announced a new emergency oversight policy created to prevent treatment discrimination against low-income patients. The policy was named after victims harmed by delayed response systems. One afternoon, while leaving class, Nadine saw an ambulance stopped near a homeless man who had collapsed beside a bus stop. Paramedics rushed out immediately. No hesitation. No questions. Just help. Nadine watched silently as they lifted him onto the stretcher. Then she turned and kept walking. This time nobody asked who could pay.